human trafficking is the fastest growing organized crime in the world, even ahead of drugs. And the reason for that, if you think about it in terms of how frequently you can use a human being for forced labor or sexual anything, exploitation, you can use them over and over and over again. But a drug, you use it once and that's it, that it's served its purpose.
Yes.
But it's actually a $150 billion industry.
100 and what?
150 billion.
With a
and
B?
It's not, yes, with a B, with a B.
Welcome to another episode of The Irreplaceable Dental Assistant. And as usual, I have a treat for you today. Do you see this beautiful young lady? Her name is Loren King. Welcome, Loren. How are you doing today?
I am doing much better now. I love talking to you. It was so great to meet you at the Dental Festival and get to talk about everything that you want to help do in the world.
Yes. We're living purposefully, right, Loren?
Yes, every day. It's tough, but it's every day.
Yeah. Well, I know a little bit about you, but tell my viewers who you are and what you bring to the world, what makes you tick, what you are passionate about. Just share a little bit more about yourself.
I am an international speaker. I am typically talking about human trafficking awareness and airway education. And I'm also a dental hygienist. I still practice clinically when I'm not speaking or teaching in some way. Mm-hmm. And I've actually also started coaching for women. It's essentially life coaching, but with a focus on trauma. Okay. So I'm diving into that more, and it's super exciting and something that more so it's a calling for me, and I can tell it's the one job I would do for free.
Wow.
And so I'm super excited about that. And I am living in Seattle, Washington right now, and who knows, that could change, but right now that's where I'm at.
Okay, Seattle. I picture that state as beautiful in the summer and in the winter.
Yes. You're not wrong. Today was actually really sunny, and we do have sunny days, but yes, it does definitely mist a lot. But what I tell people is it's not like full-blown rain. It's more of a mist. So.
Okay. That's your story and you're sticking to it, Loren.
Yes. For now, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. Absolutely.
So, Loren, can you kind of give us an overview of how human trafficking intersects with the dental industry and what are the key red flags or indicators that professionals should be aware of? Absolutely.
So the data shows us that roughly 30% of human trafficking victims visit their dentist every year or their healthcare provider. And the reason we're not catching them or being able to help them is because we're never taught anything in terms of what to look for. Some universities kind of touch on abuse, but nothing past that. And honestly, there's not enough time spent on it.
Right.
So with dentistry specifically, 50% of injuries and abuse which happens in trafficking are to the head and the neck. And we're head and neck specialists. We see these patients more than any other healthcare provider, and these are healthy reasons.
Yes.
So we have the opportunity to intervene, but we're not properly trained to do so.
Oh my goodness, Loren, that 30% hit me like a bullet in my forehead.
I know, it's roughly, it may be closer to 30% now. I think the last time I checked, it was 26 point something percent, yes. But roughly 30%. And that's the cases that we know.
Oh my
So you have to think about that too. And one thing that I bring up or kind of bring to people's attention is it's usually more of the female cases that come forward. The male cases don't come forward as much because there's shame built around that, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Could you share a real life case or example of where human trafficking was identified within the dental field? And what were the challenges and the successes in addressing that issue?
So it was actually a dental professional is the best example I could give you. It was an oral surgeon. What? And he offered someone $30,000 to buy 2 young girls. So it was actually in our industry. And with stories like that, and I know it's shocking because it's not supposed to be them, right? And that's kind of how this goes. So human trafficking is the fastest growing organized crime in the world, even ahead of drugs. And the reason for that, if you think about it, in terms of how frequently you can use a human being for forced labor or sexual anything, exploitation, you can use them over and over and over again. But a drug, you use it once and that's it, that it's served its purpose.
Yes.
But it's actually a $150 billion industry.
100 and what?
150 billion.
With a
and
B?
It's not, yes, with a B. I know. And I get asked all the time why it's the fastest growing organized crime. Why aren't we doing more about it? And honestly, there's a number of things that go into it, but you have to think about it honestly in terms of cost. Yes. That money, that's a lot of money. And some of the people that are actually involved in this are more of the 1% of the world. They're higher elite people. And so for that amount of money to just disappear, people would notice if $150 billion just disappeared.
Oh my goodness.
So you have to think about it a little different.
When I asked you that question, I was not prepared for any answer close to that. I thought you were going to share about a victim, but you opened my mind to think that people who we trust every day could actually be immersed in this trafficking industry. Oh my goodness.
I know. And I get asked questions like that too of, is it just people that are lower income or, had a rough childhood or, just bad people that are doing this? And actually, no, it's well-respected people and people of stature, people that don't look like what you think a trafficker would look like, right? So another thing I get asked is if it's more male or female that's doing the trafficking, and it's actually women are arrested just as much as men are. And if you think about it, it makes sense, right? Women are more trusting. They're easier to get anyone to trust them. People come up to them more, sometimes without even trying to get them to come up to them. So it's almost easier for a woman to get away with it than a man, if you really think about it. But you just have to slow down and think outside of what you've been taught. Because what you have been taught is that we live in the United States, we're safe, it's not happening here, it's just as bad here as it is anywhere else. The problem is we're not taught how to stop it, look for it, or anything like that. It's getting better. We're starting to see things in airports, in bathrooms.
Yes.
We're making headway, but even then, one of my goals next year is to try and get involved outside of dentistry to help with awareness more, because even with flying, I'm like, okay, I was talking to one of the flight attendants and I'm like, think of it this way. If a victim is on the plane and they go in the bathroom and they see this sign, which basically just says, if you need help, call or text this number. They don't have access to a telephone.
Right.
So we have to do more, it's great that we're at least making awareness, but unfortunately we're behind. So we need to do better, or it's time to scale that up, but that's not good enough. So it's everywhere. It's quite literally everywhere.
Yeah. And this notion that this doesn't happen in my neighborhood probably is one of the biggest barriers, because you're not looking for it in this environment, maybe over there somewhere, but certainly not here,
Yes.
wherever fear is.
Yeah, there's a few things in my presentations that I share. One is a video that basically it shows you this video and it looks like nothing's happening, just normal everyday life, and then it rewinds and highlights what your eyes didn't see, and it's trafficking. And the other two things are to what you were speaking with about the United States, or, it's not happening here. It's only in like third world countries or Mexico or something like that. And I'm like, no, actually, so forced labor is the biggest percentage of human trafficking, and sexual exploitation or sex trafficking is only about a quarter. So what forced labor, yeah, a lot of people associate it with sex trafficking, but forced labor is the biggest percentage of it. So what that looks like, and to give examples for both questions, there were cases where they were women operated. They would go to other countries and bring people here and go through the human trafficking process, forced labor here. So it's not only just happening here, but it's also female led. It's like all of the things that you would think this is about or that you're taught. It's not, it's much worse, honestly. And it's going to keep happening. Unfortunately, the best way for us to do anything is to educate ourselves.
Right. So that's probably a partial answer to my next question, which would be, what are some specific ways in which dental professionals and clinics can actively prevent and combat human trafficking within their practice or community?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I tried to go over in the presentation is actually break down each role. So the front office, I usually tell them, pay attention to how the patient is walking into the building, walking up to the desk. Are they walking up to the desk? Pay attention to their gait. Are they walking well, or are they walking like they're hurt? When it comes to filling out the paperwork, if it's like a teenager and they have no clue about any of their social history, medical history, birth date, no documentation, they're not talking, they're letting the parent talk, or whoever the handler is talk, those little things. And what the biggest thing I teach is I want you to assess. I never want you to assume, because when you assume, that's when you make matters worse potentially, or you get someone hurt, including yourself. So these little things that I teach each role are meant to send off little light bulbs of, okay, we need to be paying attention to this patient. Something feels off. And even down to like having a safe word in the office of, if you think that something is going on, say it around the building so that everyone knows, hey, Loren thinks that something might be going on. She's unsure, but just be on alert, or, just different things. But even with the dental assistants or the dental hygienist, taking them back and taking their x-rays, if it's hard for them to open their mouths or keep them open and there's rips on the corners of their mouth, that could be indicative of being choked or gagged. But it needs to be in conjunction with other things. It can't just be, I see this is happening, I'm going to report it. It's an assessment, unfortunately, and it's something that you might not actually catch the first time. So with the dental hygienist, especially with the intraoral exam, looking for, especially in very young children, looking for petechiae on the soft palate, which looks like little blood vessels that have been bursted. So in a circular form, which means I am asking them to look for forced oral sex, and I do show them what that looks like. In an adult, that's a different story, but in a child, that is one of the biggest red flags I would say that there is. So it's just the placement of it and how I show it, and I compare it to, because I usually get asked, well, what if it's a retainer? What if it's a bottle? This is on the soft palate towards the back. It looks like a circle. It's repeated blunt force trauma is how that appears. So, and the dentist, of course, I usually encourage them to be the decision maker, so that they can be the one to kind of assess the whole situation, talk to everyone on the team, or intervene themselves. That's the biggest role, is making that decision.
Oh my goodness, so much in what you just said. Don't assume, assess, and looking for that blunt trauma on the soft tissue children, the palate, the soft palate. That is information that my listeners can take immediately and implement tomorrow. That is huge.
And I'll tell you, I'll speak from personal experience. Every time I do check a child's palate, I get nervous right before, because I know one of these days, just the way the statistics are, I'm going to see it one day. If I'm still practicing clinically. So, it is something that you kind of have to have some courage to do. And I just encourage people to think about how uncomfortable the person being victimized and exploited feels versus how uncomfortable they are just checking to make sure.
That's true. When you weigh it all, it's worth your discomfort to make a difference, a positive impact.
Yes.
A life-altering or a life-saving impact in many cases. Right?
Absolutely. Oh. And at a bare minimum, if you are to, it's scary, right? It's like, this is life-threatening situations that we're not prepared for, we're not trained for. But at a bare minimum, what I encourage you to do at least is educate yourself so that you can spot it and pass it on to someone else. Absolutely. But at a minimum, just be able to see it. And then if you want to step out at that moment, that is perfectly fine. But at least be able to spot it and go tell someone so that they can intervene.
Yes. So are there any legislative or policy changes that you believe would be effective in addressing human trafficking in dentistry? And if so, what steps can individuals take to advocate for such changes?
Honestly, a few states have started requiring 1 hour of human trafficking awareness or abuse in the CEs to renew your license, but not every state. And honestly, I think it's because our legislators are not educated on the fact that this is actually a huge responsibility on our part in dentistry. And once they actually see the evidence and how serious this is, every state would require the training for it.
Well, I can tell you, although I live in Jamaica, I'm licensed to practice dentistry in Maryland. And we are required to be able to identify abuse. Not just children and women, but also seniors, right?
That's good.
I do believe that we could tweak it a little bit more and include human trafficking victims, because as I say, it's not just sexual abuse. It's you're trapped to do labor, and that means you're probably being worked to the bone. And oh my goodness, I am so glad I got you on here today, because this is such a meaningful conversation, and you have said so much in this short period of time that can make a difference in our offices tomorrow. I can't thank you enough. But I have to ask you about the upcoming dentists. How can dental schools and educational institutions better incorporate training and awareness related to human trafficking into their curriculum to prepare future professionals to address this issue effectively, Loren?
I think implementing it at all, making it a requirement versus, an optional come in on a Saturday and take this CE. It needs to be a requirement at this point. It's the percentages are too high, the statistics are too high. And at this point, like I said, we're behind, and we need to start making it a requirement, not a suggestion. It's the only way that people are going to get educated without a choice of, okay, this is not something I want to learn about because it scares me, or this is not something I want to learn about because it's dark, or, I don't want to be involved. As a provider, you have to advocate for your patients. So, at this point, it's like, okay, like I said earlier, at a minimum, educate yourself so that you can pass it on to someone else that's willing to intervene. But don't just not get educated or put our heads in the sand, right? It's, we can only do that for so long.
It's true. And nobody lives in isolation. You're a part of a family, you're a part of a community, and that those communities build cities, and you keep going further and further. And if you can do what you can do in your little corner, then it's like the pebble in the pond and the rippling effect, Oh my goodness. This has been such a powerful conversation. I thought I knew a little something about human trafficking, because this is what got us talking, because the two things that I'm passionate about, you are also passionate about, and that's airway and advocating for young ladies and girls. And I have someone who is a part of my community who focuses on human trafficking. But with all that knowledge, you still poured into me today in a way that I would not have imagined. I thought I came to rubber stamp what you said because I already knew it. Girl, blew me out of the water. You blew me out of the water today. Now, Loren, is there any particular quote that you'd love to share with us? I always ask my guests to share something that's dear to them, something that they stand by, just a quote that has been meaningful.
I would say in this situation with this subject in particular, it would be from Glennon Doyle. She is the one that says we can do hard things. And I say all the time, we're always going to be uncomfortable until we learn to talk about what makes us uncomfortable. And it's going to always be the fastest growing organized crime in the world if we don't do something to make a dent in it. The more that we create awareness, and the more that it's not just able to go through our peripheral without it catching our eye, the more we can help. And yes, I know $150 billion industry is very intimidating of what can we actually do, and it's not ever going to happen to me until it does. Is what I would remind you to keep in your mind. It takes seconds.
Oh my goodness. This has been such a meaningful conversation. Now, this podcast is listened to by men in dental offices. But somebody like me, who is a dentist, but who also from time to time has been given the responsibility of chairing an international conference, and would love to have you come to speak. If somebody wanted to do that, how would they get in touch with you? Because I just can't keep it to myself. I have to be able to say, if you want Loren to come and speak, here's where you can find her. So
yes, 2024 is definitely picking up for human trafficking awareness. And I'm really proud of people that have stepped in and said, okay, I'm not afraid of this, and I know I need to do something. Let's put our brains together of how can we implement this into the conference or the study club in some way, right? And for me, what I tell them is put your budget to at least one thing out of the event or the study club that doesn't have anything to do with your sales, doesn't have to do anything with your ROI. If you want to give back at some point in the year, this could be your way to do it. If you want to help in some way, hire a speaker. It doesn't have to be me. There's others out there. Hire a human trafficking awareness speaker. Just put it in the program somewhere. I promise it will open eyes all over the room, and they won't even care that it's not a part of the curriculum at all.
Because we're all a part of the human race.
Right. It's like, are you a human? I think that you're going to care and want to know this. Right. So with that being said, most of the inquiries come in through either Instagram or my email. With Instagram, my handle is Loren the Activist. That's Loren. And my email is lorentheactivist@outlook.com. Either of those, you will get me in hopefully as quick as possible. But absolutely, I'm still taking inquiries all next year, and I'm excited for it. I really, really hope more people, more meeting planners lean into it more and understand that it does have a lot to do with dentistry. I get asked that all the time, and that's what my course is titled. What does human trafficking have to do with dentistry? Because within seconds, that's what people ask me. And I give them that statistic first. And that's usually all I need to say. But we can do something. We can at least educate ourselves at a minimum.
Absolutely. Loren, you have to promise me. You have to promise me that you will come back and share with us again. Because I feel like you probably just touched the tip of the iceberg.
Yes.
There's lots more for us to know. But,
yes.
Yeah, so are you promising?
I promise. Yes, I promise.
I love it. I love it. I love it. This has been a heavy topic, but a necessary topic. And you have shared it in such a way that we have been able to take in little bites and digest it. So we'll come back around for round 2 at a later date. But in the meantime, thank you for the work that you're doing, because it's not easy work.
No,
you not. Know that in order for you to do this, you're climbing a steep hill, and yet still you're not backing down. So thank you, Loren. Thank you.
Of course. I tell people all the time, I will keep doing it until I can't. And that hasn't happened yet. So.
All right. Oh my goodness, I don't know about you, but I am still processing. And I think I'm going to be processing for a little while. Can you imagine 30% of victims visit a healthcare provider? 30% of human trafficking victims visit a healthcare provider, and 50% of their injuries are the head and neck. So we're seeing these people, but we're just not recognizing them. Human trafficking is one of the fastest growing crimes because the victims can be used over and over and over again. $150 billion industry. Oh my goodness. And who knew that the majority of these trafficking victims were for forced labor? I thought it was sex, but that's a quarter of human trafficking victims. The majority of them are being forced into labor. You know, we have to remember to assess. Never assume. We just need to assess what's in front of us. Otherwise, we may be missing some salient points. And how about this? How about having a safe word that when anybody in the office hears it, we know that there's a human trafficking victim in our space? You know, we have to be on the lookout for blunt force trauma on the soft palates of our children. Because we've been told that this is a sure sign of a child being forced to have oral sex. Oh my gosh. But you know what Glenda Doyle says, and we need not forget, we can do hard things. We absolutely can do hard things if it's going to save a life. Look, life is better when we live, learn, and grow together. If you have not subscribed, please don't hesitate to do so. You could find us on YouTube, Apple, Google, Spotify, on most of the podcast platforms. I'll see you the next time.